we came to Kingsley when I was in the 4th grade. So therefore I spent 39 years in the principal's office as a secretary and probably 9 years in the principal's office as a student. No, I did, together I have probably 5 decades connected with the Kingsley Pearson School. It was Kingsley School, of course, until the organization. And altogether I spent about 5 decades with the Kingsley and Kingsley Pearson School. As a child growing up, you could go downtown and they had a little restaurant, and they had grocery stores, and of course everyone knew you. Mm-hmm. And it was a relatively safe environment. And people were friendly and caring, so I guess it was a good place to come and live. You know, as a secretary, you're involved in about all aspects. And so my first job, I began working in 1967, and my youngest child was almost a year old. My sister cared for him. And anyway, the first job when I came into the building, or when I came into work, was to record grades on permanent record sheets. Well, at that time, everything was hand. Even teachers would hand in grade sheets. You recorded grades and percents by hand. And that was my first assignment. Well, that progressed into different ways of recording grades, of course. And when we got into the computer age, that was fun. There were still grade sheets to begin with, which were recorded by myself. And then later, which they do now, the grades are just shot in and report cards are printed out. So it was a much faster thing. There were some friends, teacher friends, who would help record grades, like at semester time at the end of the first semester. It was always a rush to get the grades recorded and get things going. So we'd have grade parties.
I was just going to say that.
We'd have grade recording parties, and we'd sit around a table, and some of us would have sheets, and your grandma was helping, and they would read the grades, and then everyone else would record. So and then we'd have lunch, and kind of had a grade recording party, which helped get you over the hump there. Well, some of the things that maybe you want to know what the secretary's duties were. And when I began with Delmer Bainbridge. You folks don't know him, but he was a wonderful principal. But anyway, he would tell you things to do, and he was very, very good about it. Two things he couldn't stand were water guns and snowballs. Those two things he just could not do. If he caught a kid with a water gun, and he'd be very angry about that. And so one of his punishments was to give him a pail of water, and they were to squirt the water from one pail to the next until they were done. And you can imagine how long that would take.
Wow.
Once in a while, he would be quite angry with the student, and they could use a paddle at that time. He had a paddle that looked sort of like a small oar, but they had to have a witness to the paddlings. And if he was very angry, then the superintendent would do the paddling, because of course the principal couldn't paddle when he was angry.
Right.
But they knew it when Mr. Bainbridge would give him the paddle. They kind of raise him up off the floor. But once he was so angry with the students, so he allowed the superintendent to do it. And your grandma always tells this story about how angry Delmer was, and he thought the kid should get a good paddling. Well, the superintendent just went tap, which didn't help the situation at all. So.
Wow, I can't imagine being spanked like that.
It was just, one paddle, and it was high school kids. I mean, he was a high school principal. And, the kids knew that, and they respected that thing. And in fact, some kid, who'd be there often would know it was coming, But they took him to a storeroom where all the paper was stored, and there was ample space to get a good swing, I guess. And that's where they did that. But otherwise he was a very kind and gentle man, but he did get excited about some things. But I've worked for 5 different principals, and they all had a different demeanor, and they were all great principals. One story I like, and my job was to take attendance, keep track of students, know where they were at all times. Well, you can't do that. But in the old building, there were like 3.5 floor levels. The high school was kind of on the top, but high school classes were like in the lower basement room, a shop class was there and an ag class, and then a band was on the one end. So you probably walked a mile by the time you went, and they'd put attendance slips outside the door on a nail. So every period,
Oh, wow.
I got to make my rounds. Well, I was allowed to have a couple helpers at a couple times. And so one year we had a couple boys who just didn't know what to do with themselves. They weren't just really naughty or nasty, but they were naughty. And so these two boys would take attendance for me. And I would know in the office about how long they should be gone. Well, this one particular day, they were gone a little bit longer than I thought they should be, so I was wondering where they were. So I went around and looked, and I didn't see anyone. And it got to be 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and one boy lived a block from the school. And so I thought, wonder if they sneaked home, and sneaked out to home. So I went to the phone and called them, and they answered. Yeah, if you sneaked out of school and you went home, would you answer the phone?
No,
probably not.
Right. Well, they did, and we laughed about that for years. They're growing up, and every time they see me now, well, remember when we sneaked out? Yes, I remember. When I started, they first had hot lunch, and we didn't have co-ed PE.
Oh, it's separate?
Yeah. Oh no, you couldn't have co-ed PE.
Huh.
So, and that was when we had all these stairs, and that was when the skirts were very short.
Oh.
And so when the girls went up and down the stairs, they'd hold their skirts. So the girls nowadays, if they wear short skirts, don't have to worry a lot about
Right.
going up and down stairs.